Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast, where we interview real construction owners doing big things to help you go from being a stressed out operator to a thriving business owner. Today, we have a special guest, Oliver Fernandez, the owner of McKenzie and McKenzie Construction. They've been doing construction for over 15 years, specifically residential and government contracts. This year, they're aiming to do over $50 million in business. So listen, if you're a contractor and you want to learn how to get these government contracts, how to streamline your business, how to become an owner instead of a stressed out operator, then you're going to want to pay close attention. Stay tuned. What's up, Oliver? How you doing today, brother?
Doing amazing. How are you?
Man, I'm truly blessed and highly favored. Thank you for asking. It's an honor to have. Yes, sir. It's an honor to have you on the show. You're out in Washington, D.C., is that correct?
Yeah, in Washington, D.C., like the nation's capital.
Man. So before we dive into the goods and we talk about like the meat and potatoes of what contractors come to this show for, I want you to go back in time. Tell us your story. Tell us how it all began, the successes, and don't be afraid to brag a little bit, because this is your opportunity to give people the reason why they should listen to you.
Awesome. No, so I love construction. I've grown up in construction. Growing up, my dad and my mom owned the construction company together. And, it was definitely a life-changing experience. My dad grew up in the projects, in this construction business. Like he made millions of dollars. And, we had a multi-million-dollar home like when I was like 2-3 years old. At the same time, I also know the risk and reward of construction, right? I know the rewards where you can live in a couple $1 million home, and I also know the risk. My dad ended up going into bankruptcy. It split apart the family. My mom and my 3 sisters moved to Maine. My dad stayed back and tried to pick up the pieces with the construction company. And it was, things got really tough when I was in Maine. All of a sudden I was with four women in the middle of nowhere, in the country, and no one looked like us. I had to do a lot of searching after the fact to like figure out who I was and like how do I fit in the world, right? One of my goals through all that process was I want to be able to take care of my mom and my 3 sisters. And I used to say that stuff all the time, and just that's what motivated me to then, graduate high school, go to college, and honestly, I thought I wanted to be like a project engineer on the sites. And once I got into that position, it didn't work out for me financially because I just didn't have the resources to take care of my mom and my 3 sisters. So I just kept growing and expanding. And I started the construction business, and we were doing really small jobs in the beginning. I mean, there was the biggest job we got was like a $30,000 job. And that job was a loser. We were changing out a box culvert in Lexington, Massachusetts. And it was on a golf course, and I went to see this project, and when I went and saw it, it was definitely on a pond or a lake, but it was like all dried out or whatever. And I didn't see it at the right time, because once it started raining, the thing like fills up and there's water coming out of everywhere. And it was like, we got on the job, we had everything set up, and then next thing you know, we get a big rainstorm, and water is literally washing everything that we did. And we ended up spending $60,000 on a $30,000 job. And this was the first time I had ever really like lost money. So I was like, oh my God, like I was so devastated. And I was like, this isn't for me, I was like this close from quitting. But I'm so glad I stuck it out, because those same exact lessons that I learned in that $30,000 job, because I was working for a GC, I was working as a subcontractor at GC. And that GC, the way he set me up, the way he talked to me, the way he was like, he was talking to the government. Even though I was losing money, I sat there and I listened and I watched and I listened and I watched. And I had to reflect a lot after the fact, right? But those lessons that I learned losing that $30,000 helped me go and complete over $100 million worth of projects. And now, like you were saying, we're looking to do our goal is to do $100 million a year, instead of doing $100 million in the last 15 years.
Nice, nice. So from that introduction, it sounds like you got to see the value of reward and the downset of the risk. And I want to know a little bit more about that, like what happened. But on before we dive into that, you also understand from your childhood, I had the same scenario. Like we had the big house and then bad decisions were made, and then deep pain was instilled in our life. We lost the big house. We had to go to the small little apartment. I had to grow up quick. And I told myself, I'm never going to put my family or future family through this type of pain. And you had to do that, which embedded in your spirit, like that ambition to give your future family a good life. Now, I'm curious if you could shine some light on what happened. Like, how did the job go south with your dad, the big house, the big everything, and then it just dwindled away? Like, what was it? One project? Was it multiple projects?
Honestly, I was so young when it happened. I mean, I was like 3 or 4 years old. I think when we first moved to Maine, I literally was going into first grade. So I was so young when it happened. So I don't really know all the nuances behind it all. And like, I've always heard stories. And one of the stories that my dad used to always say was like, he had trouble like with getting financing and this and that. But like, as you grow up and you start to, see who your parents really are, I don't know if that story doesn't really ring true. Like it's probably there was mismanagement of funds, you know what I mean? Like, buying things that, you shouldn't be buying. Instead of like investing in the business, you're spending the money elsewhere, right? And all of those things, they eventually catch up to you, you know what I mean? And I think that's what caught up to him, but I don't know all the nitty gritty of it because I was young,
Yeah, it's
but
it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people in construction, they make the good money, but then they go buy the stuff, the toys, instead of using the money to love the people, they use the money to love the stuff. And I
yeah,
was guilty of that for my first 6 years in business. And in the last 4 years, I started reinvesting in my people and my business. And now I became an owner because I wasn't buying all the assets and buying all the liabilities. And I'm now putting the processes, the people in place to where I can sit back and, watch the people grow the business for me. Now, curious if you could talk about your business. You told me that you have a government sector that it specializes in mechanical and electrical and plumbing, that did around 8 million this past year. You're aiming to do 30 million in government contracts this year. And you also have a residential sector, a business that does flooring, that did around 12 million. If you could elaborate on what I just said and explain to our audience your two business types.
yeah. So we started off getting into government contracting around like 2012, 2013 timeframe. And that was a business where like I knew nothing about it, right? Like we were a subcontractor before that, like for these big roadway construction companies like the Skanskas or these big conglomerates. And we were, taking sections of the work. So we would install like 1,000 linear feet of 80-inch, 84-inch RCP pipe under the downtown Tampa. And we were doing, hit or miss with those type of jobs. Some would be winners, some would be losers, some would be winners, some would be losers. And one thing that we always did was we would always give 100%. And the thing that I hated the most was like when it came to the end of the month and it was time to get paid, we would get jerked around and they would be like, oh, well, they would throw all these other roadblocks in our way. And it's like, I just hated that. You can't manage a business that way. You got other people that are relying on you getting paid, and like we couldn't get paid in an orderly fashion. So I was like, man, my goal is to work directly for the owner and be the prime contractor. And that's when we started going after those government contracts. And in the
Yes,
beginning,
yes. You got
yeah,
to be the prime. You got to be the primes, because you can get paid quickly if you're the prime.
right. And you know what the rules are, and if you just follow the rules, you can get paid, right? Whereas if you're not the prime, like the prime can throw all these other rules and make this stuff up, and it's just like they're making the rules up as they go. And I just personally, I just don't like that. I've never been the little brother, so I don't like making the rules up as we go.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we started off doing that, and then we got in the government space. And I remember the first year was so hard. I mean, I was calling and making calls and calls and calls, and we weren't really getting any traction. And then it was like I hit this one job down in Sanibel Island. It was like a $500,000 job, and we were going down there to renovate their HVAC system, and throughout the whole building. And that was like the lifeline, because like I could see how the process would work moving forward. And then I used that project and the success that we got on that project to retouch base with all the people I had called, right? And then all of a sudden we hit a job at Tyndall Air Force Base, and we hit a job for the GSA, and then we hit a job for the Navy in Albany, Georgia, and it was just like, wow, like this is really what I was looking for, right? And these jobs were nice sized jobs. Like the one we hit in Albany, Georgia was 2.6. The one in the Navy was $1 million job. And these were the biggest jobs we'd ever done to date. Like, we were breaking record after record, for the company. And, we grew that we've been growing that for as long as we've been in business right now, for the last 10 years in the government space. And in the process of that, I started talking to some of my friends that were back at home, and then they were working for a flooring company. And as being a contractor and having done these larger projects, I just let them know, like, hey, if you ever come across any opportunities that are bigger than what you can handle, let me know. Like, we'll do it together. And then he came to me and said, hey, this business owner wants to retire. He's built the business from nothing. He's put his blood, sweat, and tears in this thing. And it's doing about $5 million a year. Like, are you interested in buying it? I'm like, yeah, let's look at the numbers. And we looked at the numbers, and things made sense. I saw the tenacity in my partner. I saw the drive in my partner. I saw the obsession in my partner that to want to be great and want to build a business and make something awesome happen with it. And I was like, yeah, we'll put some money behind this thing, and let's roll. And then that's where we got the two companies now, like McKenzie, who's the government contractor. And then we have another subsidiary, like Portsmouth Quality Flooring, that does flooring in the Northeast, New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts area. They install like carpet, tile, flooring, LVP, wood floor, all that type of stuff.
It's impressive. So there's so much to unpack right there, Oliver. And I just want to ask you some basic questions, but I want you to answer this, because so many people say, like, man, why should I, as a contractor, learn how to win government contracts? What would you say your answer to that is?
For me, the answer was I wanted to provide for my family, and I was tired of getting pushed around when it came time to bill, and I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. Like I knew that if I put the work in and made the relationships and found the contacts, that we could grow this thing. We could go and get those type of projects. And and now, like, before it was just like these one-off jobs that we would get like through negotiation, right? There's all these other contract vehicles as we keep digging deeper and deeper and layer after layer, and now we're going after these MATOC awards, right? And that's why McKenzie will be able to go from 8 million to 30 million, because now we have the lead flow, right? Before we didn't have the big enough lead flow. Like, normally when you're doing these like direct award contracts, you'll get like one, maybe two if you're lucky at one installation, right? Whereas you're getting on these MATOC and these huge $100 million, $750 million contract vehicles. You can get all the awards if your numbers are competitive enough at that location. So we've been focusing on that, and now we're just we have the lead flow from these. And what MATOC means is multiple award task order contract. So what that means is like we
multi-year, like 4 or 5 years or 8 years.
Yeah. For example, we just won a $750 million award here in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and there's 6 other contractors on this award. And there's $750 million worth of contracts. We'll go through that contract vehicle over the next 7 years. And me and those 5 other contractors, or my team and those 5 other contractors, will compete on each one of those awards.
Let's go, bro.
Yeah.
$750 million, an award that you are a listed MATOC contractor. That is massive. One of my first members that trusted me when I first started Federal Construction University, named Ralph. He's a home builder out of North Carolina. He went through the training and took the actions, how to find the deals, how to bid the deals, how to talk directly with the COs, how to format the bids and the way the government likes. He won a MATOC for 4 years to change out 2,500 doors for 3.5 million, made over $1 million on that. It's a 4-year contract. So 250K in profit per year to change out doors. That was life-changing money for him. So it's interesting that you're saying that, because you just answered why every contractor should be going after government contracts. Now, what are the pitfalls? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges that people are going to face getting in this realm?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of them, I never said this stuff was going to be easy, but it's definitely worth it, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is you got to be persistent. I mean, if you think you're going to make one phone call and you're going to get a government contract, like, you're just in the wrong business. I was mentioning I made calls for a year, and I was horrible at sales. I remember, like, literally profusely sweating and stumbling over my words and trying to figure it out. But like I said, my why was so strong. I wanted to provide for my mom and my 3 sisters, and so I was willing to figure all that out. And it took me a year to, like, get my first one, right? What's the next thing? You got to be a contractor. You got to be able to execute. Like, that's one thing with being in construction. Like, you can go get the sale, but that's only half the game, right? And you got to go out there and you got to execute. And if you don't execute properly, like, you will lose money. Like I told you before, I lost money in that first job that I did, right? I did a $30,000 job and it cost me 60 grand. So you got to be able to execute. But once you understand how to push and how to pull and where to punch and where to bob and weave, like, it's a fun game. It's a very adventurous game. I mean, there's been jobs where we made over $1 million, like, on one job in, like, 4 or 5 months, So there's a lot of reward there, but there's also a lot of risk, and you got to be able to take the wins with the losses. Luckily, we've had a good streak of wins, and we always try to manage out our losses. But last year we had a job that we went in the tank on $500,000, and it was like 9 years of wins, and then all of a sudden get punched in the heart.
Yeah.
Like, you got to take the good with the bad, and we continue to finish. And I mean, like, we were, like, this close from, like, being in big trouble on that project and, like, getting thrown off the job, right? But we got to the truth, and once we got to the truth of what was actually happening, we could take step by step to climb ourselves out of that bad job.
Let's go right there. What was the truth? What was the problem? Like, go back into the story, because this is the nitty gritty people want to hear. Because I've had jobs where I lost 100 grand, and I have jobs where I've made hundreds of thousands. So talk about that story.
Yeah, so I mean, you build with people, right? And I had a person that I was building with for, like, 7, 8 years. They've done everything that they said they were going to do. They said they wanted more responsibility. They said they wanted more money. So then you hand over. You're like, yeah, I want you to make more money, and you start handing over some responsibilities, but at the same time, want in actually doing are totally different things, right? So there were some issues on that project, from, like, layout, managing subcontractors, and we also had a couple subcontractors, like, fall on their head. Like this, I've been doing this for 10 years, and then all of a sudden we had 2 contractors that we had to throw off a job. I've never had to do that before. We had to throw them off the job because they weren't performing. But at the same time, it put us in a really bad spot, because now all of a sudden
you're the prime, and you have to perform.
You have to get the job done.
The bonding is on you, baby. So you got to get it done.
Yeah, so we had to still get the job done. And, like, yeah, we can have the material and all this and that, but, like, now all of a sudden we're paying for labor that escalated over in 2021 versus when it was when we initially negotiated the job in 2020. So now, there was just a lot of like every trade on that job we lost on. And it never happened to us. I mean, like we didn't make money on the fence guy, we didn't make money on the electrical guy, we didn't make money on the concrete, and we didn't make money on any of the trades. It's just you got to be able to take the good with the bad with this stuff.
Let's talk about the good. So I want to know one of your favorite 2 or 3 jobs where you're like, I did this, it was this much, we made that much.
Yeah, no, we did. There's been so many good jobs. I mean, like we had a job that was down in Byron, Georgia, right? It was HVAC for the USDA, and we did our HVAC renovation. That was the first job we made over $1 million on, and it was like, wow, very eye opening, we've had other jobs where we're down in Air Force Base down in Patrick Air Force Base in Florida. A mechanical project there we did really well on, like $1 million. We had a project out for the Navy out in Washington State, right? Once you start to learn how the game works and you can go to different states and still operate. It was a couple $1 million job. We made $1 million on it. So we've done really well with these jobs, and we know how to make money with these jobs. So that's the good from these jobs,
That's awesome.
Doubling down and building the team and pouring it back into the team and really taking this thing to the next level. Like I said, we did $100 million in 10 years for the government. Now we want to do $100 million a year. And
you can too.
You're not going to do that by just not reinvesting in the team.
Yeah. Let's talk about your team. How are you making this possible? Like every business owner that is thriving, they have an org chart that states, somebody's a visionary integrator, somebody's in charge of all the service, somebody's in charge of operations, somebody's in charge of growth. Can you lay out your org chart and explain it to us how you're acquiring, who's responsible for acquiring the deals, who's responsible for producing the deals, etc.?
Yeah. So when we first started, it was just me, right? And I made a connection through my dad with another contractor that had done government work before. And I told him, I want to do this government stuff. I want to work directly for the government. I want to be the prime. He's like, dude, I love that. He's like, I'm doing it now. I've been doing it for the last 30 years. Like, I'm not going to give you any of my contacts, but kid, you go out there, you go find some contacts. I'll go help you execute. So, I was telling you, I spent that year and I was hustling and making the phone calls and sending the emails and going to the site visits and the networking events and the SAMI engineering events and all of the above, right? And I started making those contacts, and he helped me execute on those projects, right? So that's what the business looked like before, and we did a majority of that $100 million with just us in the office, and then we would have our superintendents out in the field. But that business is not scalable, right? Because there's just me and him, and you need people to help with finance. You need people to help with recruiting and bringing on new team members. You need people to help with the estimating, right? You need people to help with the actual project management. And that's what we're at now. Like now we built the team where we got project management, we got directors of construction, we got directors of estimating, we got directors of finance, and they all play a very important role, especially when you're doing work for this government. Because and the reason why it's so important is because the old way that I used to do it, when it was just me and my partner, we'd get caught up in one of these jobs, and like the government was requesting things that we shouldn't be doing, and then all of a sudden you got to focus and put all this time and energy and effort over there, while all these other jobs you can't put any time to it, right? But whereas you have a team, now all of a sudden one person from the team can be focusing on the problem while everybody else is operating and moving the business forward. So the government contracting business, that's why I would go from like 12 million back to 8, or from 10 million to 6. You know what I mean? It didn't have the ability to. We're trying to scale without people. And now we have people in the place, and now we can walk in the growth when we get to certain levels.
I love that. Now, referring to the process, let's say you have somebody who turns in an estimate, they see a solicitation, they turn in a bid package. Do you have your own internal pricing through your partner, or do y'all pound the phone and find the subs pricing and then put together your bid package?
Yeah, we ground and pound. We hit the phones. We put together the subcontractors. That's
Dial in for dollars, baby.
That's where the money's made. That's
Yeah.
that's where the money's made. I mean, if we just, that's where the money's made in construction, is like putting together the whole package. The government has 20 things they want to get done. They want one person to handle all 20 of those things. We put together those 20 people or those 10 people, 5 people, and we give them that one package. And if it's valuable enough to them to get the job done, they know who to call.
Yeah, they print that money. That's interesting you say that. Okay, so now you got the award, you get the email, the pre-award email. And from there, what immediately happens in your business? You got the pre-award. What's the next steps?
Yeah, we go right into getting our bonds and insurance, right? And then it goes to project manager to start executing on all the other contract requirements. We got our schedule of values, we got our submittals, we got getting the subcontractors lined up. So once you get the subcontractors lined up, next step is they gotta get a subcontract, right? So that goes back to the finance team and they start kicking out the subcontracts. And then it's all fun and games. Yeah, you get someone as a subcontract, but did they get it back to you? Did they sign it? Are you requiring a bond from one of your subcontractors? Right now, we had a project where we required a bond, but we didn't have, at the time, we didn't have someone checking to make sure we got the bond, right? So now we had an issue with that subcontractor on one project, and now we have a project with that subcontractor. We have a signed subcontract. So contractually, he's obligated to us, but we don't have that bond. We don't have like that attachment to his financial resources to make him finish that job, right?
So important. So important to get a
Yeah.
bond from your subcontractors, because that's an extra layer of protection for your company. And one tactic that we do every so often is, especially out of state, is we try to get our subs, well, we make it a requirement to make our subs bond back the entire deal. That's crucial, because right now your hands are tied, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's still a contractual obligation. We could still go after and pursue them legally, but like it's much easier to do it when you do have the bond. And
For sure.
there's also there's additional costs when you do that bond thing, right? So we typically will bond all subcontracts over 250 grand. And and a lot of times some of these smaller contractors, they can't get bonding, but they can do a heck of a job. So I mean, there's ones where we got like $250,000 for a trade, subcontractor can't get a bond or whatever, or it's not big enough to get a bond or whatever, doesn't have the financial backing to get a bond, but he can do the job for 80 grand. Like, am I gonna turn away that? Am I gonna turn away that 100? Yeah.
Just make sure you got somebody on site watching, right?
Yeah, no, we always have somebody on site. We always have a superintendent on site, making sure jobs are being executed and implementing that McKenzie brand in the field. Because that touches on our core values. I mean, like we're not only accountable to each other, we're accountable to the government, we're accountable to each of our team members. So all of that matters,
Love that. So it sounds like you have gone through an EOS method or traction, because you mentioned core values. Which resource did you learn from to build your core values?
Yeah, so I've definitely read those books, and those books are awesome. We work with Cardone Ventures, Brandon Dawson, and he's the one that taught me the core values and the systematic approach of building a business and taking it to the next level.
Nice. Okay, so you got an estimating department, you have a construction department, somebody who's actually going to get the jobs done. You have underneath the construction department, you have superintendents, people who are going to watch the jobs. You have a person who's going to deal with all the submittals, all the paperwork, all the bonding, all the subcontracts. Now, in terms of growth, where's the growth department in your business?
when you say growth, is that like the new projects or like what?
Well, in the government realm, I guess it's more estimators, more business developers. How many
Yeah.
current how many do you have currently?
So we have 3 people in the estimating department, and yeah, that's, I mean, once you get on, so our target is to get on $3 billion worth of max, right? So right now we're about 1.3 billion of those max. And then like we get that three billion, and they typically will have, they're all spread over 5 years, so that we're gonna get 20% of that. And then they're typically give them out to 5 contractors, so we'll get 20% of that. And that works out to be 100 million, $120 million a year in contracts. So that's where we said that target of $100 million, that's where we backed into it from a mathematical standpoint. Get 3 billion, 20%, $120 million a year.
All in. Now, I got a question for you. I'm curious how these are out-of-state contracts. A lot of people listening in are just mind blown. They're like, wow, you're doing projects out of the state. How is that possible? Talk to us about how you protect your company. What are the processes, the checklist, the protocols when you're doing a project in Alabama or Hawaii or California?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, the numbers got to be right? Like I'm not going out of town for a $2,000 job or a $5,000 job. I'm going out of town for a 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, $5 million job. So in that 5 million needs to have my overhead numbers need to be profitable, right? And how do we protect that? The way we protect that is we always have someone that looking out for McKenzie's best interest on site. And sometimes we got 2 people on site, whether it's a superintendent, quality control manager, site safety and health officer. So we always have those people on site. And then, we create a systematic approach so that, like, yes, the field is executing, but the home office is like staying in tandem with them, right? So we create we create a big schedule, but then we also chunk it down into 3 weeks. So we create our 3-week look ahead schedule. And if there's that 3-week look ahead schedule is basically driving the whole project. And we know what subcontractors are doing what and when they're doing it and how they're doing it. And if there's any deviations from that, then the field needs to come back to the home office and tell us, like, hey, there's a deviation. If it doesn't make sense, no, we're not doing that. But if it does make sense and it's an add to the project and a value add to the project, yes, we'll go ahead and deviate from the 3-week look ahead, but it still gets updated and everybody's on the same page. So like when you're doing stuff out of state, you got to be in alignment, and you have to be all pushing towards the same target. Everybody has to all be on the same page. And with technology nowadays, like we're talking over Zoom, like we create those calls and we make sure we're in communication with the team and everybody's on the same page from what needs to be done, what subcontractors we're using. And that's another way we keep ourselves protected, right? We're working with subcontractors that are the best of the best. Like I don't want a subcontractor that's a dud. I want a subcontractor that goes out and performs, that knows how to make money, because if they can make money, they can make me money.
Yep.
And we hire
find the best guy in town. Find the best guy in town. As long as you can make money, he can make money, right?
Right. And so like remember that story I was telling you about where the subcontractor had to throw him off the site? Well, like we got to vet the subcontractor too. Like, so this person had been in business for 30 years. They had done work on the Navy base before. The thing we missed was that the dad died and the son took over the business, and the son was a dud, and he didn't do what he said that he was going to do, right? So we always work through that. And like one of the things my estimators will do is like, hey, I always ask them, like, hey, did you have any issues when getting your proposal? Because if you're chasing somebody when they're getting that proposal, you're going to be chasing them throughout the whole project. And we ask those little questions now to really dial in. Do we want to even work with this company?
That's a great little nugget right there. Did you have any issues getting the proposal? Because if you do have issues getting the proposal, you're going to have issues dealing with them as the sub. Any more words of wisdom like that you can just pull out of your hat? Because that's fire.
Yeah, it just comes from doing it for so long. I mean, there's a ton of them, and I hope to keep going.
Curious, how do you avoid in-person site visits? Do you have any technique, strategy?
Yes, you got to have a team, right? Like I'm here in Washington, D.C., but we got site visits going on in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Memphis, Tennessee, Kentucky. I can't be in all those places at the same time. Have I tried to? Yes, I have, and it's like crazy. It's not fun. Like I want to be running up the hill with 20 of my friends carrying the water and like, carrying a bigger bottle of water than just me trying to carry my one little thing. And we got superintendents that'll go to the site visits. We have, other project managers or other personnel that will go to the site visits. And then they get a checklist while they're at the site visit. Hey, we need a picture of this. We need to know what this is. We need, pictures of every piece of equipment, the name tag on every mechanical piece of equipment. And don't just take a picture, check to make sure the picture is clear. So we have those checklists.
Right.
So anybody can do a site visit and we get the information we need to be able to put a price on it.
That's so true. That's so true. Send a teaming subcontractor or send some personnel. Now, what about as far as what would you say your superpower is?
Oh man, that's a good one. Being able to dream, man. I mean, how many people do you talk to where they don't dream anymore? They're like, what do you want to do? I just want to survive. You know what I mean? I've been there before. When we were first starting out, I was telling about those DOT jobs. I mean, the business got into $500,000 in the hole. Like we didn't have any prospects to pay it back at the time. And I called every one of the vendors and I told them I was going to pay out. They're going to get paid back. You're going to get paid back. And we ended up working it through it. But I even in that moment, I still was able to dream and say like, I want to be the prime contractor. I want to be the guy that's doing these government contracts. And then not only just being a dreamer, but then being the person that's willing to do whatever it takes, obviously ethically, morally correct, to make that a reality. And I will sacrifice. I will sacrifice and do whatever it takes to make that a reality, make my dreams a reality. So I think the combination between being able to dream and then willing to sacrifice to make it all a reality, is my superpower. And then it's like it's training the team to do it, right? And training the team how to execute on that and take have the same ability to dream, but then also put the work in to go get your dreams, and then we can all do something way bigger together than what we could do all alone.
Amen, brother. Amen. What's your favorite band in the whole world, in the entire universe?
Honestly, I'm at the age where I got 2 kids and I got my daughter's 3 and my son's 1. So like I got like Coco Melon like running through my head all the time, like the Vaca Lola. So I don't really even know. Like, I don't even listen to music that much anymore. It's like it's what they want to listen to.
I love that. Is that the Goalie River behind you in that photo?
No, so that's so I went whitewater rafting and it reminds me of business, it's like, and that's what I tell the team. It's like, if you're not rowing, bailing water out of the boat, plugging holes that are in the boat, moving this boat forward, like you're gonna get bumped out of the boat. Like we all gotta be going in that direction, right? And I'm right along. I'm right there in the front too, so I'm right along there with you. But we're all rowing and we're bailing and we're doing whatever it takes to move this business to the next level.
What's your number one job as the CEO of the company?
I've done every job here, and right now it's changing. It's like being more of the leader in the forefront. I'm at the same time I am an operator, so I like to do that stuff, but I know that my highest and best use is going to be to bring everything together. You know what I mean? Like the same way I can bring 10 subcontractors together. Now it's like bringing 25 team members together so that we can go do a bigger goal. So now it's like putting those pieces together, building the leaders who can then help build the teams, and then, helping integrate the technology into the organization so that we can really scale to the next level.
Love that. What process do you have in place that you're most proud of?
Man, being able to even start to duplicate myself. I mean, I was telling you, it was just me and my partner in the office for so long. So I'm not like a person that's I'm great at building teams. Like, no, even, a couple years ago, I would be so scared to even talk on this, in a audience, in front of an audience, so it's like growing that ability of myself to be able to lead, to be able to communicate a message that can get people all moving in the same direction. Yeah.
What's the last book you've read cover to cover that's just impacted you and your life in a positive way?
Yes, I love reading books, but at the same time, I love taking action on the books that I read. So the last book I'll just talk about the book that I'm reading right now, and it's so cool because I love reading things from different angles. So it's a house flipping book, and I like a sales tactic that I've heard over and over and over again finally made sense to me. So when people are like, "Oh, I got to think about it," like I've heard the response to that objection over and over again. But by reading this house hacking or house flipping book, and they were talking through an example of when the person writing the book would deal with that objection, and basically now that in my mind I have an understanding that that objection means there's another objection out there that the person isn't being upfront about. So you need to find that objection. So that's the book that I'm reading right now, and it's cool that that book has helped in an area of life and sales that I didn't even really pick up the book for. I was picking up the book to just continue to sharpen my skill sets from a real estate standpoint.
Isn't it interesting how we can always learn from different perspectives, and we can always take from different industries, because there's nuggets of wisdom everywhere. And as long as you have that growth mind, you can benefit and extrapolate value from the scenario. Curious about your take on mentors. It sounds like this mentor of yours has been, or this partner of yours has been a strategic partnership in growing your business. Talk on the subject of mentors and how important it is, especially in the government construction realm.
Oh, it's who made me the person I am today. Having people that knew the path forward, and I was willing to do the work. That's a game changer. So that mentor, helped me get in the government space, and I told you we've completed over $100 million worth of projects the last 10 years. One thing I will caution everyone on this show is that once you have a mentor that is mentoring you, you need to make sure that mentor is still growing themselves. Why? Because if not, there's a ceiling, and you're going to hit that ceiling. So, now I have another mentor that sold his last business for $151 million. That's something that I want to do. I want to grow something so big that there's something to really talk about. And then even in the real estate space, I had a mentor that helped me get 9 units here in Washington, D.C. He wanted to continue to do that, the duplex triplex game here in DC, and I found another mentor that now has helped me get over 3,000 apartment units. So it's mentors in my life have transformed my life, and it's helped me see the world in a totally different way. And
who's the mentor you utilized for getting those 3,000 units? I'm also a real estate investor, and I'm fascinated by what you just said.
Yeah, so I've gone through Rod Cleef's program, and then my partners that have been in Ferris with Disrupt Equity. They've been instrumental in keeping me focused on building that real estate portfolio of mine. So yeah.
What's the best tip you can give to an owner who's leading a team and wants to leave a legacy?
And stop thinking about you. It's not about you. And once you stop thinking about you and what you're gonna get, that's when the things will start to change. And find people that are aligned and let them run. Don't get in their way. It's That was the hardest thing for me. Is like, don't say that, but it's like, dude, people need to learn, they need to grow, but they also need direction, right? So provide the direction, don't abdicate responsibility, which means just, hey, go do this and just think that someone's gonna figure it out. They most likely are not gonna figure out, because if they did already have it figured out, they would be doing it for themselves. So you gotta like work with people and help them grow and see the bigger picture. And then once they do have it, let them roll, like let them run. And it would be amazed to see what you can all create together.
Oliver Fernandez with McKenzie and McKenzie Construction, absolutely crushing it. This has been a blast to learn about you, to learn about your business, and potentially on our next episode, we'll dive deep into your residential flooring sector. Thanks for being on the Real Construction Owners Podcast today, my man.
Yes, sir.